The stars looked different from the bridge of the Aurora's edge. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck, watching the blue and green planets slowly rotate below them. Kepler 442b had been calling to explorers for over 200 years, but no one had ever found what they were looking for. "Captain, we're ready for landing," said Dr. Lisa Park, adjusting her research equipment. She was the best human archaeologist in the fleet, and Jake trusted her completely. Her excitement was hard to miss as she checked her scanners for the 10th time that morning. The ship descended through thick clouds that parted like curtains, revealing ancient stone structures that stretched across an entire continent. The ruins were massive, built from some kind of dark metal that didn't reflect light. Even from high above, Jake could see intricate patterns carved into every surface. "My people have studied these ruins for 3 centuries, said Vextar, the ship's Zephyrian consultant. His blue skin shimmered as he spoke, and his 4 arms moved constantly as he gestured. "We have never been able to understand their purpose." Standing beside him was Melodic Hum of Stars, a representative from the Crystalline Collective. Her body was made of living crystal that chimed softly when she moved. "Our greatest minds have examined every stone. The builders, whoever they were, used technology beyond anything we know today." Jake nodded as he guided the ship toward the largest structure, a temple that rose like a mountain from the center of the ruins. The building was perfectly preserved, as if it had been built yesterday instead of millions of years ago. No weather had touched it, no time had worn it down. The landing was smooth. As the crew prepared to disembark, Jake noticed something strange. All around the ship, small lights began flickering on throughout the ruins. It was as if their presence had awakened something that had been sleeping for a very long time. "That's new," Dr. Park said, pointing at the lights through the window. "In all the records I've read, no one has ever mentioned the ruins lighting up." They walked through the temple's main entrance, their footsteps echoing in the vast hallway. The walls were covered with carvings that seemed to tell a story. Dr. Park ran her fingers along the smooth stone, trying to read the ancient symbols. "Look at this," she called out, stopping at a particularly detailed section. The carving showed figures working together, building great ships and cities among the stars. One figure stood out from the others. It looked almost human, but taller and more elegant. Vextar examined the carving with his specialized scanner. These builders, they had 2 arms, 2 legs, like humans, but our records show no human presence in this part of the galaxy until very recently. The group continued deeper into the temple. Each room was more magnificent than the last. The walls glowed with their own light, showing star maps and mathematical formulas that hurt to look at. Some rooms contained devices that none of them could identify, though they clearly still had power running through them. Finally, they reached the temple's heart. The chamber was circular and enormous, with a domed ceiling that showed the real-time positions of every star in the local galaxy. In the center of the room stood a crystal altar, and embedded in that altar was the most beautiful weapon any of them had ever seen. The crimson blade was exactly as the legends described. Its metal was deep red, like dried blood, but it seemed to pulse with its own inner fire. The blade was as long as Jake's arm, perfectly straight with symbols running along its edge that matched the carvings on the walls. 200 years, Melodic Hum of Stars said, her voice creating harmonics that made the air vibrate. 200 years, and no one has been able to move it even a fraction of an inch. Jake walked around the altar, studying the blade from every angle. It looked like it should be easy to lift. The handle was the right size for a human hand, and the blade didn't look particularly heavy. But he knew from the records that some of the galaxy's strongest beings had tried and failed to budge it. Dr. Park was taking pictures of everything, her camera flashing constantly. "The markings on the blade," she said, zooming in with her lens. "They're not random. This is definitely a language, and parts of it look familiar." "Familiar how?" Jake asked. She showed him her camera display. "Some of these symbols appear in human archaeological sites on Earth, very ancient sites that we've never been able to properly date." Vextar's scanner beeped loudly. "Captain, you need to see this. I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout this temple." Whatever power source these builders used, it's still active. As if responding to his words, the temple around them began to change. The walls grew brighter, and new passages opened that hadn't been there moments before. The star map on the ceiling zoomed in on their local solar system, highlighting planets and structures that weren't on any official charts. "We should leave," melodic hum of stars said nervously. "Every time someone has tried to study this temple intensively, something goes wrong." But Jake couldn't take his eyes off the blade. Something about it called to him in a way he couldn't explain. The red metal seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, and the symbols along its edge almost looked like they were moving. Dr. Park noticed his fascination. "Jake, what are you thinking?" "I'm thinking," he said slowly, "that maybe we've been approaching this all wrong. Everyone who's tried to claim this blade has been alien. What if it was never meant for alien hands?" The temple fell silent except for the soft humming of ancient machinery. Even Vextar's constant gesturing stopped as the implications of Jake's words sank in. "You want to try to lift it?" Dr. Park asked. Jake looked around at his companions, then back at the blade. The weapon seemed to be waiting for something, and he had a growing feeling that it was waiting for him. "Not yet," he said finally, "but I think we need to understand a lot more about who built this place before anyone touches that blade." As they left the chamber, none of them noticed that the blade had grown slightly brighter, or that new symbols had appeared along its edge. The temple was waking up, and it recognized something in the humans that it had been waiting for across the long centuries. 3 days had passed since they first entered the temple, and the political situation was getting worse by the hour. Ships from 3 different alien governments had arrived in orbit around Kepler 442b, each claiming the right to the ancient blade. Jake stood in his ready room looking at the tactical display that showed the growing fleet around them. The Zephyrian Empire had sent a battle cruiser. The crystalline collective science vessel hummed with barely contained energy. The Hive Confederation's organic ship pulsed like a living heart as it grew larger by the hour. "They're all demanding we turn over the blade to them," said Commander Amy Brooks, his first officer. She looked tired from dealing with the constant diplomatic messages flooding their communications. "And what exactly are they offering in return?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer. "The Zephyrians are offering protection. The collective promises to share their research findings. The Hive says they'll grant us trading rights." Amy shook her head. "None of them are offering much, and all of them are implying bad things will happen if we refuse." Jake had dealt with alien politics before, but never with stakes this high. The Crimson Blade wasn't just a weapon according to the legends. It was supposed to be the key to understanding the predecessors, the mysterious race that had built the ruins. Dr. Park entered the room carrying a stack of data tablets. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep, but she was more excited than Jake had ever seen her. "I've been analyzing the temple's response to our presence," she said, spreading the tablets across Jake's desk. "Every time we enter the central chamber, more systems come online. The temple is definitely reacting to us specifically." "Reacting to humans, you mean?" Jake asked. "That's what I thought at first, but it's more than that." She pulled up a detailed scan of the blade. "Look at these measurements. The handle isn't just human-sized. It's specifically sized for adult human males between 6 and 7 feet tall. The grip pattern matches human bone structure perfectly." Amy leaned over to look at the data. "That's oddly specific for a coincidence." "It gets stranger," Dr. Park continued. "I've found similar patterns throughout the temple. Door handles at human height, steps sized for human legs. Even the air composition in the sealed chambers matches what humans need to breathe comfortably." Jake studied the information, feeling a chill run down his spine. "You're saying the predecessors built this place for humans specifically?" "I'm saying the evidence points that way. But here's the problem. According to every historical record we have, humans didn't leave Earth until 300 years ago. These ruins are millions of years old." Before Jake could respond, the ship's communications officer announced that representatives from all 3 alien factions were requesting a meeting. Within an hour, Jake found himself back in the temple's central chamber, surrounded by some of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Krexisol represented the Zephyrian Empire. He was 8 feet tall with muscles that could crush starship hull plating. His bio-enhanced strength was legendary throughout the galaxy. "Humans have no claim to this artifact," he declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "My people have studied these ruins longer than your species has been spacefaring." The Crystalline Collective had sent high-resonance crystal song, a being of pure living mineral who spoke in harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. "Our analysis indicates this blade contains technology that could revolutionize energy production. It belongs to those who can best utilize its potential." Most disturbing was the Hive representative, a cluster of interconnected beings that spoke with one unified voice. "The Confederation's collective consciousness can comprehend the blade's true purpose better than any individual mind. We will make better use of its power." Jake listened to their arguments while watching the temple around them. The walls were definitely brighter now, and new passages had opened since the aliens arrived. Whatever was controlling the temple systems was responding to the increased activity. "I propose a test," Jake said finally. "Each of your factions gets one attempt to claim the blade. If none of you succeed, we declare the planet a protected archaeological site under human oversight." The aliens exchanged glances. They had all tried to claim the blade before, but never under such formal circumstances. The idea of failing publicly was embarrassing, but the alternative was potentially losing access to the ruins entirely. Krexisol stepped forward first. He was confident in his enhanced strength, flexing his forearms as he approached the altar. The Zephyrian placed his hands on the blade's handle and pulled with enough force to bend steel bars. Nothing happened. The blade remained perfectly motionless. He adjusted his grip and tried again, this time using leverage and his full body weight. His exoskeleton creaked under the strain, and small cracks appeared in the crystal floor around his feet. But the blade didn't move even a millimeter. High-resonance crystal song was next. The collective had brought their most advanced gravity manipulation device, a machine that could lift entire buildings. They positioned it carefully around the blade and activated it. The air around the altar shimmered as space itself was bent and twisted. The gravity device hummed with power that made everyone's ears ache. But despite the tremendous forces being applied, the blade remained exactly where it was. The Hive's attempt was the most elaborate. 50 of their strongest drones entered the chamber, their movements perfectly synchronized. They formed a circle around the altar and reached for the blade simultaneously. Their collective consciousness focused entirely on the task. Their combined strength was incredible. Working together, they could move mountains. But like the others, before them, they achieved nothing. The blade might as well have been part of the altar itself. As the aliens stepped back in frustration, Jake noticed something they had all missed. Dr. Park was kneeling beside the altar, examining tiny grooves in the blade's handle with a magnifying glass. "Jake," she called softly. "Look at this." The grooves were almost invisible, carved into the metal with incredible precision. They were too small for Zephyrian fingers, too narrow for crystalline appendages, too fine for Hive drones to feel, but they were exactly the right size for human fingerprints. Jake looked up at the assembled aliens, all watching him expectantly. The temple's lights pulsed brighter, and somewhere in the walls, ancient machinery began to hum. "It appears," he said slowly, "that it's my turn to try." The chamber fell completely silent except for the growing sound of awakening technology. After millions of years of waiting, something in the temple was finally ready to reveal its secrets. Jake Morrison had never felt so many eyes watching him at once. The alien representatives stood in a circle around the crystal altar, their various forms of breathing creating a strange symphony in the ancient chamber. Some were skeptical, others desperate, but all of them watched with intense focus as he approached the crimson blade. "Captain," Vextar said quietly, "perhaps we should record this attempt for historical purposes." "Already doing it," Dr. Park replied, her camera ready. She had positioned herself where she could capture both Jake and the temple's reactions to his approach. As Jake took his first step toward the altar, something extraordinary happened. Lights that had been dormant for millions of years began flickering to life throughout the temple. The effect spread outward from the central chamber like ripples on a pond, illuminating passages and rooms that no living being had seen before. "By the 7 moons," whispered high-resonance Crystal Song, her harmonic voice creating overtones of amazement. "In all our centuries of study, nothing like this has ever occurred." The Hive representative's cluster of bodies shifted nervously. Our collective memory contains no record of such activation patterns. This human's presence triggers responses we cannot comprehend. Jake ignored the comments and continued walking. With each step, the temple responded more dramatically. The star map on the ceiling began moving, showing real-time positions of planets and ships throughout the local galaxy. Holographic displays materialized from nowhere, filled with symbols and diagrams that seemed to shift and change as he looked at them. "Jake?" Dr. Park called out, her voice tight with excitement and concern. "The energy readings are off the charts. Whatever's happening, it's building towards something big." He stopped just in front of the altar, close enough to touch the blade. This near, he could see details that hadn't been visible from a distance. The red metal wasn't uniform. It contained swirling patterns like captured smoke, and those patterns were moving slowly, hypnotically. The symbols carved along the blade's edge were definitely letters or words, but they seemed to be written in multiple languages. Some looked like ancient Earth scripts that Dr. Park had shown him in her research. Others were completely alien, unlike anything in the galactic databases. "The handle," he said, studying the grip carefully. "It's not just sized for human hands. Look at the wear patterns." Dr. Park zoomed in with her camera. "You're right. Someone has used this weapon before. The metal is worn exactly where human fingers would grip it." Krexisol moved closer, his bio-enhanced eyes analyzing the details. "Impossible. Our dating methods confirm these ruins are millions of years old. No human civilization existed that long ago." "Maybe," Jake said, reaching out slowly toward the blade. "Our dating methods are wrong." The moment his fingers made contact with the handle, everything changed. The temple exploded with light and sound. Every wall, every floor tile, every decorative element blazed with energy. The holographic displays multiplied until the air itself seemed alive with flowing information. And the blade sang. It wasn't a sound exactly, more like music transmitted directly into Jake's mind. The weapon felt warm in his hand, perfectly balanced, as if it had been waiting for him specifically. The red metal pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, and the symbols along its edge glowed bright enough to read clearly. "Jake!" Dr. Park shouted over the noise. "The temple is performing some kind of full system startup. Every piece of technology in this place is coming online." Simultaneously, he lifted the blade from its resting place with no effort whatsoever. It might as well have been made of air. The weapon hummed with power that he could feel in his bones, and somehow he knew exactly how to use it. The knowledge wasn't his, but it was available to him as if the blade itself was teaching him. The alien representative stepped back in shock. For 2 centuries, the greatest warriors and most advanced technology of 3 different species had failed to budge the weapon. A human had lifted it as easily as picking up a piece of paper. "This is not possible," the Hive representative said, their unified voice showing more emotion than Jake had ever heard from them. "Our collective analysis indicated the blade was molecularly bonded to the altar structure. High resonance. Crystal Song's harmonic patterns shifted to frequencies that indicated deep confusion. Our gravity sensors show the weapon still registers as having the same mass. How can something so heavy move so easily?" Vexitar was scanning everything with his instruments, his 4 arms working frantically. "Captain, I'm reading energy signatures that don't match any known technology. The blade is generating power levels that should be impossible for an object that size." But Jake barely heard them. The blade was showing him things, visions that flashed through his mind faster than he could process. He saw the temple as it had been millions of years ago, bustling with activity. Tall, elegant beings worked alongside others who looked unmistakably human. He saw great ships traveling between stars, carrying humans to distant worlds. He watched as the predecessors and humans worked together to build wonders that spanned entire solar systems. And he saw the end. Some kind of disaster that forced the survivors to hide their greatest achievements, waiting for a time when humanity would be ready to reclaim them. "Jake!" Dr. Park's voice cut through the visions. "Something's happening. To the temple structure." He blinked, returning to the present moment. The chamber around them was transforming. Walls were sliding apart to reveal new passages. The floor was rearranging itself to create new pathways, and from somewhere deep in the temple's heart came the sound of massive machinery awakening after an impossibly long sleep. The blade in his hand pulsed once, brightly, and suddenly Jake understood what was happening. The temple wasn't just a monument or a shrine. It was a key, and by lifting the blade, he had turned it. "We need to get everyone back to the ship," he said, his voice strangely calm despite everything happening around them. "Now." "Why?" asked Krexisol. "What's occurring here?" Jake looked at the blade in his hand, then at the temple transforming around them. The weapon was beautiful and terrible, and he could feel the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. "Because," he said, as the ancient machinery reached full activation and the temple's true purpose began to reveal itself. "I think we're about to learn why the predecessors built this place and why they left it for humans to find." The blade pulsed again, and somewhere in the depths of the temple, something that had been sleeping for millions of years finally opened its eyes. The temple had become something entirely different. What had been ancient stone walls were now revealed as sophisticated technology panels, their surfaces alive with flowing data streams. The ceiling opened like a flower, exposing chambers that stretched upward farther than they could see, and in the center of it all, where the altar had been, rose a pillar of pure light. Jake stood holding the crimson blade, feeling its power pulse through his body like electricity. The weapon was teaching him things without words, downloading information directly into his mind. He knew the blade's name now, Kethmorai, which meant key of truth in the predecessor language. Dr. Park was recording everything, her camera working frantically to capture the transformation around them. "Jake, the energy readings are beyond anything our instruments can measure. It's like the entire planet is waking up." The alien representatives had moved closer together, their previous hostility forgotten in the face of something none of them understood. Vextar's bio-enhanced senses were overloaded by the sensory input flooding the chamber. High resonance. Crystal Song's harmonic patterns had become chaotic, reflecting her species' confusion. Even the Hive Collective seemed unable to process what they were witnessing. "What have you done, human?" Krexisol demanded, but his voice carried fear rather than anger. Before Jake could answer, the pillar of light began to change. The radiance dimmed and took shape, forming the image of a being that was both familiar and alien. It stood 12 feet tall, with features that were elegant and refined. Its skin had a golden hue, and its eyes held wisdom that seemed older than stars. When it spoke, the words came in perfect translation to each listener's native language. "I am Keth Moran, last speaker of the predecessors. I greet you, children, of the younger races, and you, inheritors of our legacy." The hologram turned to Jake specifically. "You have lifted the key of truth, as we knew one of your kind eventually would. The time has come for you to understand your true heritage and your responsibility to the galaxy." Dr. Park stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her amazement. "You're a predecessor? Your people really existed?" Kethmoran's image smiled, an expression that was hauntingly human. "We did more than exist, young seeker of knowledge. We were the gardeners of this galaxy, tending the growth of life on countless worlds." The chamber around them changed again, becoming a vast display showing the galaxy as it had been millions of years ago. They could see the predecessors' great works, worlds being shaped, species being guided in their evolution, civilizations being taught the basics of technology and philosophy. "We guided many races to sentience," Kethmoran continued. "The Zephyrians, with their strength and honor. The Crystalline Collective, with their harmony and shared consciousness. The Hive Confederation, with their unity and purpose. Each was given gifts suited to their nature. Vexter found his voice. But why did you disappear? What happened to your people? The hologram's expression grew sad. We learned too late that gardeners must eventually let their gardens grow wild. Our guidance became dependence. The younger races looked to us for every answer, every solution. They stopped growing, stopped learning, stopped reaching for their own potential. The galaxy display changed, showing worlds becoming stagnant, species losing their drive to explore and discover. We realized that for the galaxy to truly flourish, we had to step back. But we also knew that someday guidance would be needed again. High-resonance crystal songs harmonics shifted to frequencies of understanding. You created a species to replace you. Not created, Moran corrected. Guided. On a distant world called Earth, we found a species with remarkable potential. They were curious, adaptable, stubborn enough to solve problems on their own, but wise enough to know when cooperation was necessary. Jake felt the weight of the blade in his hand increase, not physically but emotionally. You're saying humans are your successors? You are our partners, Moran said firmly. We embedded keys within your genetic structure, not to control you, but to allow you access to our tools when you are ready. The Crimson Blade responds to you because you carry our legacy within your very DNA. The temple around them transformed once more, revealing rooms full of technology that made their most advanced computers look like simple calculators. Weapons that could stop wars instead of starting them. Medical devices that could heal entire populations. Ships that could cross the galaxy in days instead of years. This temple is one of thousands scattered across the galaxy, Moran explained. Each one contains tools and knowledge appropriate to your species' development level. As humanity grows and matures, more sites will open to you. The Hive representatives' cluster moved nervously. What about our species? Are we to be ruled by these humans? Moran's laugh was genuinely amused. Ruled? You misunderstand entirely. Humans are meant to be guides, not rulers. They will help you achieve your own potential, just as we once did for them. Dr. Park was frantically taking notes on her tablet. The lost human colonies mentioned in our legends, do they really exist? They do indeed, Moran confirmed. When Earth's Dark Age began, we helped some of your people reach distant stars. They have been waiting for this moment, when their cousins from Earth would be ready to reunite the human family. Jake looked at the assembled aliens, seeing the fear and uncertainty in their various expressions. This doesn't have to change anything between our species, he said carefully. We're not interested in conquest or domination. Krexazol's bio-enhanced muscles relaxed slightly. What are you interested in? Jake held up the blade, watching the light play along its surface. The weapon was showing him possibilities, futures where different species worked together to build wonders that none could achieve alone. Partnership, the same thing the predecessors wanted. Moran nodded approvingly. The key of truth shows potential futures, not fixed destinies. The choices you make from this moment forward will determine which of those futures becomes reality. The hologram began to fade. My time grows short. Remember, children of all species, the tools we leave behind are meant to build, not destroy. Use them wisely, and the galaxy will know peace and prosperity beyond your current imagination. As Moran disappeared, the temple began to quiet. The displays dimmed, and the machinery settled into a steady, purposeful hum. But the fundamental changes remained. Passages stayed open, technology remained accessible, and the blade in Jake's hand continued to pulse with power. Dr. Park was the first to break the silence. Jake, do you realize what this means? We're not just explorers anymore. We're inheritors of the greatest civilization in galactic history. Jake looked around at the aliens who had been adversaries just hours before. Now they were something else. Potential allies. Partners in a future none of them had imagined possible. The question is, he said, feeling the responsibility settle around him like armor. What do we do with that inheritance? 6 months later, Jake stood on the observation deck of Kepler Station. watching ships from dozens of different species dock at the massive space station that had grown around the predecessor temple. What had started as a simple archaeological expedition had become the center of galactic civilization. The crimson blade hung at his side, its weight familiar now. He had learned to use its power carefully, unlocking predecessor sites throughout the galaxy, while ensuring that dangerous technologies remained safely secured. The weapon had become more than a tool. It was a symbol of humanity's new role in the galaxy. Dr. Park approached, carrying a data tablet filled with reports from exploration teams scattered across known space. She looked tired but happy, her eyes bright with the excitement of constant discovery. The team at the Vega site just activated another archive, she said, showing him pictures of ancient star maps. They found the locations of 17 more human colonies. Some of them are only a few weeks away by predecessorship. Jake nodded, studying the data. Each discovery brought new hope and new responsibility. The lost colonies had developed in isolation for thousands of years, creating unique cultures and technologies. Reuniting them with Earth and each other was proving to be both wonderful and challenging. Commander Amy Brooks joined them at the observation window. She had been promoted to station administrator, coordinating the massive diplomatic and scientific effort that Kepler Station had become. "The Zephyrian delegation is ready for the morning session," she reported. "They're still having trouble accepting that humans aren't planning to use predecessor technology for conquest." Through the window, they could see Vextar leading a group of Zephyrian officials toward the diplomatic wing. The proud warrior had become one of humanity's strongest allies, but convincing his government had taken months of careful negotiation. "They'll understand eventually," Jake said. "Change takes time, especially for species that have been thinking one way for thousands of years." The transformation hadn't been easy for anyone. When word of humanity's connection to the predecessors first spread, panic had gripped many worlds. Some species feared human domination. Others worried about losing their independence. A few had even considered attacking Earth before humanity could fully claim its inheritance. But Jake's approach had been patient and diplomatic. Instead of claiming predecessor sites by force, he had invited representatives from every species to witness their activation. Instead of hoarding advanced technology, humanity had shared beneficial discoveries while keeping weapons and dangerous devices under careful guard. High resonance. Crystal Song materialized beside them, her crystalline form chiming softly as she moved. The collective had appointed her as their permanent liaison to humanity, and her harmonic translations had become essential to cross-species communication. The medical technology from the Andromeda site has successfully eliminated the plague. On Hive Colony World Zeta-7, she reported, her harmonics carrying overtones of satisfaction. They wished to express their gratitude for humanity's assistance. That had been one of their first major successes. When a devastating disease threatened to wipe out an entire hive colony, Jake had authorized the use of predecessor medical technology to save them. The gesture had done more to build trust than months of diplomatic meetings. Dr. Park pulled up another report on her tablet. "Speaking of the hive, they've made remarkable progress with the agricultural systems we shared. Their food production has increased by 300%. The cooperation wasn't one-sided. Each species brought their own strengths to the alliance that was slowly forming. Zephyrian military expertise helped secure dangerous sites. Crystalline computational power accelerated the translation of predecessor records. Hive organizational skills kept the massive coordination effort running smoothly." A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Amy checked her communication device and smiled. "It's from the exploration team at Wolf 359. They've made contact with the New Geneva colony." Jake felt a familiar thrill of excitement. Each reunited colony brought new perspectives and capabilities. New Geneva had developed advanced terraforming techniques that could turn dead worlds into gardens. Their knowledge, combined with predecessor technology, could transform the galaxy. "Any word from the Deep Space Survey?" he asked. Dr. Park nodded, enthusiastically. "They've found evidence of predecessor activity in the Magellanic Clouds. If they're right, our inheritance extends far beyond this galaxy." The scope of it was almost overwhelming. Every week brought new discoveries, new possibilities, new challenges. Jake sometimes wondered if the predecessors had truly understood what they were setting in motion when they chose humanity as their successors. As if responding to his thoughts, the crimson blade pulsed gently at his side. Over the months he had learned to interpret its signals. This pulse meant reassurance, confidence that they were on the right path. Bextar returned from the diplomatic wing, his bio-enhanced features showing satisfaction. The Zephyrian High Council has agreed to join the formal alliance, he announced. They will contribute their fleet to protecting predecessor sites from those who would misuse them. That was significant news. Not everyone in the galaxy supported humanity's new role. Several criminal organizations and rogue states had attempted to claim predecessor technology for themselves. Having Zephyrian military support would make such attempts much more difficult. What about the Outer Rim Confederacy? Amy asked. Are they still claiming that humans have no right to predecessor inheritance? High resonance, Crystal Song's harmonics shifted to patterns indicating mild amusement. Their position becomes less sustainable as more evidence emerges. The genetic keys are undeniable, and the technology responds only to human activation. Jake walked over to the communication console and activated the station-wide channel. Throughout Kepler Station, beings of dozens of different species stopped their activities to listen. This is Jake Morrison, he began. 6 months ago, we discovered that humanity carries a special responsibility in this galaxy, but we've also learned that responsibility is something we share with all sentient species. He paused, looking out at the ships from so many different worlds. The predecessors didn't choose humans to rule over others. They chose us to help others reach their full potential, just as they once helped us. Every species has gifts that make the galaxy richer and stronger. Through the window, he could see beings of all shapes and sizes working together on projects that would have been impossible for any single species: Zephyrian strength, crystalline computation, hive coordination, and human adaptability combining to achieve wonders. Today I'm announcing the formation of the Galactic Heritage Council, Jake continued. Every species will have a voice in deciding how predecessor technology is used. This inheritance belongs to all of us. The response was immediate and enthusiastic. Harmonic cheers from the crystalline areas mixed with Zephyrian war chants and hive collective acknowledgments. Even some of the more skeptical species transmitted their approval. Dr. Park smiled as she watched the celebration through the observation windows. You know what this means, don't you? We're not just explorers or archaeologists anymore. We're the founding generation of a new galactic civilization. Jake touched the crimson blade's handle, feeling the weapon's approval pulse through the metal. In its red depths, he could see glimpses of possible futures. Worlds transformed, species unified in purpose, the galaxy itself becoming something greater than the sum of its parts. The predecessors waited millions of years for this moment. He said quietly, I hope we're worthy of their patience. As if in answer, the blade flared brightly for just an instant, filling the observation deck with warm red light. When it faded, Jake could have sworn he heard something like laughter in the ancient weapon's harmonic resonance. The galaxy was vast, full of wonders still waiting to be discovered, and for the first time in millions of years, it had gardeners. Again, not to control its growth but to help it flourish in ways that would have made the predecessors proud.